generally: developmental disability, mental health, public library, senior services, zoo, park district, and so forth. One of the things that we were led to focus on a little bit in our presentation, and if we care about our city and care about the best way to close that $24 million gap, we have to think about the earnings tax. And it's interesting, if not dispositive, it's interesting that we're at 2.1. Most of the other major cities in Ohio are 2.5. Columbus, Cleveland, Dayton, and Toledo and Akron are at 2.25. And right now, the city manager is saying the way he could balance the budget, he has to roll back expenditures for every department by 5%. That's a big hit. When I was on council before, we had 7,000 plus employees. Now we have about 5,000 employees. So a lot of retrenchment has taken place. If, as we have done in recent years, you say, well, there can't be layoffs of firefighters and police officers, which is those two areas are a tremendous proportion of our budget. If you talk about, then you have to reduce the other departments by 15%, which is doing great damage to our community. You know, by the way, if somebody has a questioning point, wants to check, please do.
We need a transit levy at some point.
Right.
We need one as soon as possible. My understanding is that the 0.3%, which goes to transit that the city pays, I guess council would have to take a position on, are you going to repurpose that, or are you
just your name
to let that go away? And then my other question is anyone talking at all about looking into taxing exercise stock options, since so many of our big...
We can't anymore. You know, that was talked about before, and then the legislature, not most recently, but the time before that, when they did, quote, tax reform, they took that power away from municipalities. We can't do it. Because in recent years, the state legislatures got more aggressive, but you know, we can only assess an earnings tax in the first place if the sufferers or because we have permission from the state legislature.
What about the 0.3?
I expect to make the transit sales tax levy attractive, we'll have to reduce the earnings tax, 0.3. My personal position would be give back 0.2 and keep 0.1 to help with some of the operating issues or challenges that we have with the budget. That would help a lot. Long term, I think if we want the city to be a quality city, a world-class city, we have to talk about more revenues. Unpleasant as that is, and even though my understanding is that the earnings tax is strongly opposed by some of the key members of the business community. Unlike, apparently Columbus was able to go to 2.5 because the Chamber of Commerce got heavily involved and promoted it. And if we don't have that support here, it's going to be a tremendous challenge. So, all right, I didn't want to talk just about taxes, but that is a burden I seem to have with my new committee position. One of the things we talked a lot about in the campaign, and now we have to try to bring it to reality, is better community engagement or civic engagement. We've had a lot of instances in this last term. I was chair of the Neighborhoods Committee where zoning issues came through, and there would be projects come through that not only were the community councils and other community groups opposed, but they said, you didn't involve us. We need to have a voice along the way. So I just reintroduced a motion that asked the development department to develop some signposts, some policies that make sure engagement takes place. We have the same issue with the, an example of that with Children's Hospital, and one of the issues that we debated with approval of the zone changes and the property sale in connection with the Children's Hospital expansion was whether Children's Hospital had adequately engaged with the Avondale Community Councils and other parts of the Avondale community. A few months ago, we had a development project at Liberty and Elm, and the community council was opposed and said, you know, we really weren't involved. We don't like the way this looks. It's too massive, and we think it ought to include some affordable housing. I voted against that. Was it 8-1, 7-2? 8-1. And the principal, well, I didn't like the way it looked, but the principal reason was that I thought the claim that there wasn't sufficient community engagement was valid. And if we're going to get past paying lip service to community engagement, we have to set up some procedures that our development department is required to follow. And then, if it's not followed, we have to be willing to say no to particular development. I mentioned that one of the, yes, Brendan?
Well, I kind of wonder, David, your opinion about this. You know, we have a community council system where it's basically volunteers, and
Right.
that's wonderful. I think a lot of times people are confused about what their community council's relationship is to City Hall. It's just kind of a natural, like when we're working with working people, like, oh, well, they don't have any power. I wonder, like, what you would say. I mean, are there some powers we could give to those community councils to make them more, you know, meaningful, or where's the answer there? I mean, would you like to see us go to a ward system? But I think neighborhoods and the politics kind of have to go together. Right now, they're just totally separated.
Well, first of all, depending on the neighborhood, you find tremendous variances in amongst community councils. Some of them are very representative, engage large swatches of the community. Others don't. You can go to some neighborhoods and the community council has had the same leadership for decades and nobody participates. And if anybody should walk in the door and say, I want to participate and maybe be president someday, the incumbent president will push that away. Others have term limits. I mean, Northside is a great example. You go to the Northside Community Council, you keep seeing new people, you keep seeing there's energy, there's enthusiasm, there's subcommittees that actually do work, and I've told them, and I really mean it, that it seems to be the best community council in the city right now. And so you feel good, and so we care a lot about them. So one of the issues always, so generally we say the voice of the community is the community council. We want to hear what you have to say, and we tell developers, and I tell community groups, you should engage with each other, and either one of you that doesn't engage, you're proceeding at your own risk. And if the community council is against you, developer, that's likely to be a problem. And community council, if you haven't engaged and the developer is able to say, I tried it and I can show that I tried, and community council wouldn't have substantive conversations, then the community councils are likely to suffer. So we're the elected officials, okay? So at the end of the day, we got to make the decisions. Now you ask a different question about a ward system and all that, and we could have a separate conversation about that. We do provide money for community councils, NSP funds, which they're $1,600 a year. That was less than that when we took office 4 years ago. The last council took office. I'd like to see it get up to $10,000. It's been hard some years because the money's required. We allocate money for neighborhood business districts, and the communities that are the most successful at City Hall are the ones that all the groups work together. Westwood is, which used to be a very cantankerous, negative organization, Westwood, I mean years ago. Now they are all working together, and they've had good success getting support. So unless we go to a district system, I mean, it's not appropriate for all those folks that are busy living their lives and not engaged with the community council to say, okay, the community council has the last word, and if the community council is against something, city council will never vote for it. That can't be the rule. In my opinion, the rule has to be, though, that we want to hear from you, and we want you to be engaged. We want the city to engage with you. We want developers to engage with you. And you know, there are people, I don't know if you know some of the leaders in trying to get changing attitudes from the city and changing policies include Peter Hames, Sue Wilkie, invest in neighborhoods. And I'm committed in the context of the budget to improve our quote community engagement process. When it comes to the budget, we got a major problem with health costs and the health needs of our citizens. Those are two different questions. Part of the reason that there's a $24 million projected deficit at this point in the next budget is that health costs for our employees are going up dramatically. It's unlikely to get better. Then we got the health department that's providing primary health care services to so many of our citizens and have depended on a lot of federal money. And nobody knows what's going to happen in D.C. and it's likely to impact us in ways that are going to be very difficult. Because for some years now, we've had a substantial commitment to primary health services provided by the city ever since Bobby Stern began her career with City Council. In recent years, because of some federal programs that were available, we were able to provide those services without too great an impact on the city budget. So that's going to be very difficult for us going forward. Last year, the City Council adopted an ordinance that said we want 1.5% of our general fund revenues to be devoted to what we call human services, which generally means money that's set aside for agencies that meet some of the needs of our citizens. And the last time around, we had three priorities that we want agencies to address, and to which we have preferences when we allocate the money. Employment, homelessness, violence, and victim protection, right? Yeah. I've talked about affordable housing. Has anybody read Dreamland?
Yes.
I just finished it. It's a very thought-provoking book. It helps me understand why Ohio seems in some ways to be at the center of it all. But Dreamland is a book by a journalist that for the last, I guess he covers 2 decades really, but it was written, I think it was published a couple years ago. But basically it tracks why there's so much substance addiction in recent years. And part of it, not all of it, part of it is because of the